Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about clarity and focus in photography. And we're going to keep working in black and white. And I just want you to take notice of this old guy here. Look at his stubble on his chin and his plaid in his shirt, all of his wrinkles. This is a highly, highly focused and sharp photograph, and it's pretty well balanced with the unfocus in the background. If everything were hyper focused, you would not have the same results. You wouldn't see the look in his eyes or the way that his hair is combed. And so we're going to talk about how depth of field and focus can affect your quality of your photos. The reason why I chose this photo is because it's very, very soft and hazy in the background. And so if you take a look, though, in the foreground, the crisp look of that violin is very, very, very clear. Take a look at the highlights, look at the necklace. And you can get a level of detail in photography that is really, really, really quite nuts, pretty insane. I mean, you've got pores and hairs and veins, and there's quite a bit to this photograph. So we're going to talk about clarity. Really, it's focus. We have to figure out our depth of field, okay? So if you take a look at this distance, if you were to deal with something that we call aperture, you would have either a narrow depth of field where a small amount would be clear and everything else would be hazy, or you would have a large depth of field where you have a lot of things, get out of there, a lot of things clear and only a little bit hazy. So let's talk about this aperture. This is also known as your f-stop. And so you have all of these examples of aperture on a regular film, and even digital cameras still have aperture on them. It is the amount of light, the level of opening in light. So you can see with a high number, you have a small level of light, or a small opening. With a smaller number, you have a larger opening. So here we go. In optics, an aperture is a hole or an opening through which light travels. More specifically, the aperture and focal length of an optical system determine the cone angle of a bundle of rays, that's the light, that come into a focus in the image plane. The size of the stop is one factor that affects depth of field. Smaller stops, or otherwise known as larger F numbers, okay, here's your smaller stop. Smaller stops produce a longer depth of field, allowing objects at a wide range of distances from the viewer to be all in focus at the same time. This is because less information leads to less distortion or lack of focus. On the flip side, though, to use a larger f-stop, here's your larger f-stop, which is a smaller number. Gets a little confusing there. You will have a larger likelihood of distortion or lack of focus on long distances. This can play to your advantage in an artful way when taking pictures. All right. So let's explain this out here. We've got a larger f-stop here, and we have a smaller f-stop here. But notice the numbers are larger. Okay, so if you take a look, the middle one is, slightly hazy in some areas of the background, but mostly this depth of field is fairly clear. If you take a look here, though, there's only one little tiny bit of focus in your larger f-stop. Whereas with your smaller f-stop, you have so much of a depth of field focused in there. You can see it in this image too. You've got hardly anything in the background, and you can use this. I can focus on only the plant, and I can really see it very well with a larger aperture. But when I go down to my smaller aperture, it kind of blends in with the background. I can't really see it. You can see in the middles all sorts of different levels of haze in the background. And so this leads to, if you know this concept well, you can actually do a lot with depth of field. So check out all these bikes, okay? Is it a large f-stop or a small f-stop? And here, you're focused in on this baby. Everything else is hazy, okay? So they're using the f-stop to focus in on what they want you to focus in on. They don't care about the dad, they care about the baby. So we're going to do some close-up photography. Oh man, this got pixelated. Close-up photography, though, is going to really give you some nice attention to focus and clarity. And this is what I would not consider close-up photography. So you can see this is taking the links of a chain and really, really, really focusing in on it. Whereas with these pairs, not so much. They're a little far away. Okay, that's more of a still life. Close-up photography allows you to see detail. And just like the detail in these dewdrops and this feather, it's really honing in on focus and clarity and all of the details of all of these luscious textures. This is actually a really nice smooth spoon that you're looking at in this image. And so you're seeing this depth of field, though. Aperture, is on the larger side. You can see all sorts of really lovely details in with this close-up photography. So we're going to get into this idea of detail and focus. And if you notice, we're also paying attention to composition. This kind of wraps into this focus, and it's actually using a rule of thirds sort of situation where you have 2/3 mushroom, 1/3 space over here. So don't forget about those really important nuggets of information that you had from the last black and white project. All right, that is all for today, and hopefully we will get you started.